morning, no, good afternoon, and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. I have breaking, flashing news for you today. Hold on one second. I'm going to ask Harry Drost why there's feedback. Yeah, but I'm hearing while I'm talking. A minute later, I'm hearing my headphones. But for your listeners out there, I got breaking big news for you. Democracy is not dead in New Haven. True, it has been on life support at times, but I have big news for you to tell you. A bunch of people are running for office in elections this year. You might think they weren't. There was going to be a big mayoral Democratic primary, which we used to think of the only election in town. But the Republican Party has managed, for the first time in my memory, to come up with a really significant slate of serious candidates for mayor, alder, and even city clerk and board of education. You're going to have choices in November, folks. In this hour, we're still going to tell you all about those choices and meet the faces behind the names you're going to see on the ballot. We're going to revisit them again as the election comes closer. We'll probably hang out one-on-one with them. But we thought today would be a good day just to announce that democracy isn't dead and give you a taste of the flavor of candidates that New Haven's Republican Party is fielding in a city where being a Democrat is almost like the official state religion. So say good morning, folks, to John Carlson, the candidate for mayor of the Republican Party, Joshua Van Hosen, the candidate in Ward 26. Josh, did I screw up your name again?
You did. It's Van Hoosen. Close.
Van Hoosen. I'm so sorry. Van Hoosen. It's only the 20th time I've tried to say it right. James O'Connell, Board of Ed candidate. You've heard him before on WNHH. He's run in previous years. Anthony Acri is going to tell us why we should care, and we should, about who is our city clerk. I think we have Gail Roundtree on the phone. We're trying to get her up on the on audio and video, running in Ward 11 for alder, which is going to be it might be a three-way race in November. And we're hoping to be hearing this hour if she shows up from Deborah Reyes, Cononis. Probably screwed up her name too, so she'll help me out. Ward 13, Fairhaven Heights. She's going to be one of three candidates on the ballot in November. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for showing up.
Good morning, Paul. Thanks for having us. As you said, I'm trying to bring democracy back to the city of New Haven. It is on life support. People want to find out more about me who are not politically prejudiced. Can go find out carlsonformayor.com. They can find out more. That's CARLSON, the number 4 mayor.com, carlsonformayor.com. I'm also on Facebook. I'm glad you mentioned Gail Roundtree and Deb Reyes. Quinones. Deb, I believe, got tied up at work and may not be able to join us. And I believe Gail has just joined us.
All right.
In addition to that, Paul, we may have some candidates petitioning on. And for those people out there who don't even know who their alder is, it's probably an indication that your alder isn't doing a good job. There is still time for people to petition on and run for other alder seats.
But to be a Republican, don't they either have to win a primary, or I guess if there's nobody else, in the party running for a seat, and you've had your convention.
Anyone who wants to run now would have to be running a petitioning candidate running against unopposed, no one running against him.
And then they have to do that.
There is still time actually for people to primary one another in both parties.
But what if it's someone your party doesn't approve of? Like what if someone from the Chinese Communist Party decided they're going to get the 12 petitions they need to run in Ward 1, probably the most likely ward, to run?
That's an interesting point. But in the interest of democracy, they would have to present their case to the voters, and their opponent would have to present their case to the voters, and the best candidate would win. So our interest is in bringing fiscal responsibility, safe streets, and good schools back to the city. We don't necessarily mind what party you're with if you're working to make New Haven a better place. So if a communist wants to try to hijack the Republican ticket and do so, I can't stop them.
I guess the part of the
probably in the best interest of democracy.
And I guess the part of the point is,
the more
John,
candidates, the better.
And I guess part of the point is, John, it's hard to get enough serious people to run for office that we would welcome them if people want to try to hijack the process, because at least people would be getting involved, right?
Listen, we need more voices in the city of New Haven. It brings a discourse, and the more people you have involved, the more differing points of view you have on a problem. Usually the problem gets solved in a better way that works for everybody. And what we need to get away from in New Haven is these name tags of Democrat, Republican. We need people who are going to work to make New Haven a better place, no matter what party they're from. National politics aside, all politics are local, and we have to work for people that are going to work for New Haven and make New Haven a better place to live.
Okay, so John Carlson.
I'll be updating my website every week with more information. It's not going to be a sparse website with very little vague information. I'll be changing it, adding details as we go. For instance, just a few moments ago, I issued a press release where I stated I am against the sale of green space and parks to developers. I know the city has okayed the sale of Kensington Park to developers. It's in litigation right now. I'm opposed to it. There's only so much green space. You cannot make any more green space. I know a lot of people out there probably are flabbergasted right now to hear that coming from a Republican, but I am very pro-environment, pro-green space, pro-science, pro-environment. I'm a member of the National Arbor Day Society, the Sierra Club, and the World Wildlife Fund, all for over 20 years. The environment.
Wait, what was the third one?
To take care of.
You had the National Audubon Society, World Wildlife Federation, National Arbor Society.
Arbor Day Society, Sierra Club, and World Wildlife Fund.
You sound like a 1989 Connecticut Republican, Stuart McKinney, Lowell Weicker. That's what they were all for until some other anti-climate change. But we're not going to get to that because today I'm going to work.
We only have one planet. We have to take care of it. And that's something that all New Haveners can agree on.
Okay,
we can't get in the business of selling parks. It turns into a slippery slope. The Alder in Ward 18 was on record. He voted for the sale, and he said, well, because the park wasn't being used what it was designed to be used for, it fell into the hands of drug dealers and drug users. So by his reasoning, any park can be taken over by drug dealers and drug users, and then, okay, it's on the market now because it's not being used for what we intended it to be used for. Simple fix, let the police do their jobs, enforce laws, clean up the park, make it a safe place for people to go to and enjoy. And the park continues to be used for what it was designed for. Let's be honest, we're not going to make any more green space in New Haven. We're not going to tear down buildings to make a green space. We have green space. We have to preserve the green space we have.
And actually, that's not a green space. It's a space. It's a play space. Like the reason people are trying to save it.
A play space, even in our kids, for environmental reasons, for health reasons, for mental health reasons, kids need a place to play and a safe place to play. So we should have more police patrols near our parks, near our open spaces. People want to feel safe when they go visit places. And by all means, we need to have our kids out getting exercise, out enjoying themselves, out socially interacting with other kids.
All right. You're hearing from John Carlson.
To their well-being.
You're hearing from John Carlson, Republican mayor this year, in a year where we're actually going to have races. We're not going to have too many primaries in the Democratic Party for local races. We're going to have one really interesting one or other two potentially interesting ones out of 30 wards. But for the first time since 2007, we're going to have a Republican candidate for mayor. And we're going to have a pretty solid slate here of Board of Ed, City Clerk, and all their candidates. You're listening to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM. So here's what I'd like to do, guys. I promise to ask only one national politics question. I'll save it for the end. Because as John is saying, this isn't about what's happening in Washington. It's not about the former guy, as one president calls him. This is about issues in New Haven, like you just heard, the park on Kensington Street with John Carlson, the mayoral candidate, just come out on the side of neighbors who are trying to save that park. Interesting issue. John laid it out from an environmental position that you don't just destroy a park if drug dealers take it over. You let the police enforce laws and let kids have a safe place to play. There is another point of view on this. Well, I have to admit I personally agree with John. There is another argument that is made, which was that there's a need for more affordable housing, too. There's pressure for that in town. The developers who are going to expand Kensington Square development to build housing there are going to offer green space someplace else. There's another green space that's bigger, a block away, but it's not a playground. But as John said, first of all, you can't believe in developer promises. You have to prioritize green spaces. Kids need a safe place to play. Fair way to put the issues there, John?
Yes.
All right. So now what I'd like to do is do a few citywide questions, and I know we have a lot on the air here. I'd like to start with John about the citywide issues. People could chime in. And then I want to go with each person who's on the air today about their specific race and what their specific issues are. And again, as a die-in-the-will Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren type person, I'm going to restrain myself from making ideological national fights and keep politics local until for one question at the very end. So, John, what's the strategy here? Are you guys running as a team? You laid it out for me really clear at the beginning of the show. Your big issues seem to be, and there are a lot of smaller issues too, let's restore democracy, let's give choices, and there are three specific overarching issues of fiscal responsibility in a city that's had fiscal problems, even though we have 5 minutes now of a one-time infusion of $100 million, good schools, and safe streets. Is it fair to say, everyone, now just raise your hand, is that a platform that's consistent for the whole party? Is everybody running this year as a Republican endorsing those four overarching issues? A, we want to give people a chance to vote for other points of view, and we want to stress fiscal responsibility, good schools, and safe streets. Would everybody on this line, obviously if you're running for city clerk, you're dealing with ballot issues and that kind of stuff, but raise your hand if that's true. And all right, so we're going to then be able to present that. That's what the Republicans are offering this year, and now we're going to get into the weeds. Given that you have, and the last time we saw this in town, where a slate of candidates actually ran with a common three top issues, was when Unite Here union-affiliated alders and their labor allies, and I didn't think this was hidden, in 2011 ran to get control of the Board of Alders. And they had 18 candidates running who endorsed a similar package of three issues with a different spin on it, and they won 17 out of 18 races, and voters responded positively to a platform. So given that you have a common platform, is there a strategy for you to run as a team? So that year you had a group of candidates who each had local issues to their wards, but they also had a common platform and a common strategy where they worked to build up a list of supporters going door to door. Are you concentrating, for instance, in tying John and Jim's candidates for mayor and Board of Ed with the individual alder candidates and concentrating those wards, campaigning together, getting voter lists of ones and twos, meaning likely voters? Is that something you're doing?
Well, I don't want to disclose too much of our campaign strategy.
That's not like the biggest secret in the world. Like people do one and two.
You never let other people know what you're doing. So Josh is actually running, with his own treasurer on his own. He was the first to declare. He declared back in January. He knew he was running. All the other candidates and any candidates currently running are part of a slate. I'm running for mayor, so I'm running individually. And each candidate has their own ideas how they're going to run their campaign. So they're going to run their campaigns as they see fit. And I'm going to run my campaign as a citywide event. I'm not really going to focus on one or two neighborhoods. I'm going to focus on New Haven.
Okay, that's cool. But John, it's not secret. There are certain kinds of strategies that are secret.
Right.
You want
to go to people who vote the majority of the time. But at the same time, Paul, you can't eliminate people who haven't voted. A lot of people haven't voted because they haven't had a choice. They're picking between.
So are you, for instance, going to dedicate your limited resources and trying to sign up new voters, or will you be going door to door in certain wards to build up lists?
I'm not gonna have the manpower to spend a lot of time signing up new voters. Mm-hmm. So all of my manpower is going to be dedicated to citywide issues that affect everyone in every neighborhood.
But I mean, sometimes like when people run for office locally, I often ask them at the beginning, are you doing ones and twos? By that I mean, are you trying to win? Are you trying to get lists of voters? No, I know you're trying to win, but like you're not going to win unless you get ones and twos, right?
I am running to win. I would not run anything to lose and simply bring attention to
which would be okay too.
I'm running to win.
Okay, so like for instance, can you win if you don't have a database of people who've told you they're likely to vote for you? You know what their names are. You know what their address is.
So Paul, I have a database. I have many Democrats who said they'll be voting for me because they're voting for people and policies. So I have a base. I have a platform. I have people I'm targeting to vote for me. But again, we're a limited party, so I'm only going to be able to reach so many people. I'm only going to be able to knock so many doors. But I'm trying to go to every voter, every neighborhood, every person in the city, and offer them my plans, my promises, and present that to them. So to answer your question, of course, I do have to, when I send out robocalls and texts, I do have to target people that have a tendency to vote more often than others, both strategically wise and economically. You won't want to waste a lot of money on people who never vote, but I still have to reach that person because in a lot of cases, they haven't voted because they haven't had a choice.
Okay, you've now
this year we have a lot of choices. We'll be adding more choices. I think we're going to add today 3 more alder candidates who are going.
Oh, that's exciting! Oh, that's great.
It is.
Oh, wow!
And I hope this broadcast encourages other people, no matter what party they're from, to get out and get involved politically. Like I said before, if you don't know your alder's name, your alder cannot be doing a good job.
All right, and you're listening to Dateline New Haven, WNHH-FM, your home for community radio, 103.5, live streamed at newhaven.org. Democracy is alive. There are choices in New Haven this year. The Republican Party is running its hardiest slate of candidates for both citywide offices, 3 of them, God forbid, and alders as well, and we're talking to them on this episode. Thanks for revealing all those secrets, John. We're now going to make sure that the Democrats who aren't watching this program will find out all about the 1s and 2s you're going to call. Jim O'Connell, you've been around. Is he Jim or do you want to be James?
Either or, I use Jim.
And that's because you were a school teacher and you're the kind of guy who isn't wearing a tie and kids can relate to you, right?
That's not correct. In the school where I've taught, forever and ever and ever have worn a shirt and a tie every day.
All right. Just teasing you, Jim. So, Jim, you're running for Board of Ed. There are only 2 elected Board of Ed seats, although that's kind of changed how the Board of Ed works. Ed Joyner's running for re-election as a Democrat. You're running as a Republican. Why are you running, and what's your big issue?
Well, I ran when this seat was first contested in 2015 against also Dr. Joyner. And at that point in time, I was the only name on the Republican line. So even though I was only running in half of the city, I was the head of the ticket. And believe it or not, I got about just short of 15%. It was 14 point some odd percent. And when I lost, I wrote a nice note to Dr. Joyner, congratulated him, and said that I believe that the city will be better off with him on the Board of Ed. For a while, Dr. Joyner certainly fulfilled that hope and wish that I had for him. However, as time went on, things seemed to travel downhill for our elected representatives on the board. And the highlight of this, I believe it was reported in your newspaper, your online paper, on November 21st of 2017, shortly after Dr. Joyner won election to a full 4-year term, where him and the other elected representative, Mr. Goldston, got into somewhat of a spat, and it ended up with Dr. Joyner, and this is a direct quote, again, from the New Haven Independent, saying that we can go out to Bowen Field and have a duel. And
the police cleared the room, and there was chaos. This was a Board of Ed meeting.
What on earth is an elected representative on the Board of Education challenging the other elected representative to a duel? And shortly thereafter, there was a quote from the assistant police chief saying that talk like that represented a dangerous signal to our children. And there's no place in America, let alone in New Haven, for someone who was elected to a position on the Board of Ed challenging someone else to a duel. Now, whether or not it was said in jest or not, I don't know. But certainly that is not something that is very representative of someone that we would like. And from every report that I have read, both online and in print, at times the Board of Ed has been in total chaos. Everyone has their own issues. I would be a total outsider. I don't know anyone who works for the city in the Department of Education. I had a former neighbor who was a teacher in the city, but no longer there. Other than that, I don't know a soul. I have no allegiances. I have a very good background, besides being a teacher for the last 42 years, although currently my current school is closing, and this is my last month of employment there anyway.
What school is that, Jim?
Sacred Heart High School in Waterbury. And they failed to make it through the pandemic because of a whole lot of issues. So I am looking for a new place of employment. But at any rate, I have a bachelor's degree in health education and biology from Southern. I have a master's degree in school administration and supervision from Fairfield University. And I have a second master's degree from Fairfield in private school administration. I have done all sorts of activities in our school, ranging from the chairperson of the science department to the acting administrator when our boss is out of the building, and everything in between. And we are an inner city parochial high school. So I'm very familiar with the issues that present themselves in a lot of the schools in New Haven. And I believe that representing an outside point of view with no one that I am beholden to would be a very, very good thing for the city.
All right. And Ella Gabriella, thanks for posting on Facebook. For people reading comments, Paul Bass is referencing a system used to track how much support one has on an issue for a candidate. One is a strong supporter, someone who might even go out and campaign. Some political organizers go down to 4 or 5. 5 often don't contact again because they're so strongly against. 3 is usually undecided. So if you want to campaign, you need more 3s up to 1s and 2s. So now everyone knows what door-knocking volunteers are writing on the clipboards, laugh out loud. And now you all know, well, John revealed one of his secrets. I just revealed one of mine. One of my first test questions for candidates is, are you doing 1s and 2s? Because that lets me know if they have any shot in hell of winning. So thanks. So Jim O'Connell, his basic message seems to be, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, what we need on the board, Ed, now is an outside voice who has no allegiances to factions, but in fact has deep personal experience. 42 years as a classroom teacher, masters in school administration supervision, chairing a science department, being familiar with urban education issues through your lived life, but not with the politics. Is that a good way of summarizing Jim O'Connell?
I would say yes.
All right, so now, and we're going to do by the way, all you folks, we're going to do you more fully one-on-one. The door is going to be open as this campaign gets closer, especially in October. I'm going to invite everyone on to talk more at length, and I'm going to challenge you to a duel, but only a metaphorical one, Jim, you and Ed Joyner, to come on the air together. So here's an office I have so much interested in, and people almost never talk about, which is city town clerk, beginning with why it's called city town clerk, because of a quirk in our history, the kind of thing Josh Van Hoosen would love to research. But Anthony Ackery, you're running for city clerk. I am. Why are you running for that job, and what's your background?
So, you answered the question that you just asked earlier. Change. This is all about giving the voters a choice. Mm-hmm. This is all about change. I have been a lifelong resident in New Haven, and there's times I complain about taxes, of course, complain about crime, complain about programs for youth. But in my complaining, I've never done much about it. So there comes a point in your life you're saying, enough complaining, let's do something about it. Now you would think, well, city clerk, what could city clerk do? There's a lot city clerk can do.
Well, I agree with you.
The first thing is, look, we live in this pandemic world right now, so our whole voting structure has changed. I believe that as time goes into the future, we're going to have more and more votes being done absentee ballots. So I think, unlike the past election where we were not prepared, I've got to make sure we're prepared to have an accountable and correct system for absentee ballots. Because, I mean, what counts most? I worked many years in Washington, D.C. The biggest thing that we want to make sure is everybody that has a right to vote can vote. So, to me, that's a very important part. Forget the paperwork for the moment of a city clerk. There's things that can be done to promote proper election, as I say, the absentee ballots. So that's one of the reasons.
So are you not part of the effort? I won't start national politics. Are you not part of the effort trying to limit how many people can vote absentee? Are you not looking to limit how many drop boxes there are or what hours there are? Or are you looking to expand all that?
I'm looking to expand that. I'm not looking to limit anything. As I said, we want everybody that has the right to vote to vote.
And what did you do in Washington, Anthony?
I was a contractor for the federal government. So for 20 years, I commuted from New Haven to Washington, D.C. I had my own business in Norwalk, Connecticut, where we supplied microwave communication equipment, thermal imaging cameras, did a lot of work on the southern border to keep our borders more protected. So you asked about my background. I have a BS in accounting from Quinnipiac University. I have a master's in business from Stanford Hill. So I've got a strong financial background. And I think what I could bring to the city clerk office is also look at the budget there. I mean, we need to, as we say, maintain fiscal responsibility. So I'm looking to see where I can shave or cut some unnecessary expenses in the city.
Do you have any in mind? Because I see the
I'm looking at that right now. Next time we talk, I'll give you more information.
And it's interesting to me. Like, I know the people work very hard there, and I know you're not suggesting they don't. It's so interesting to me, offices like that where workflow is so variable. Because on the one hand, when it's election time, they never have enough people.
Right.
And at other times of the years, the demand isn't as great. Although there's demand. Do you have specifics, Anthony, on ways you can expand the vote? Like, would you do more drop boxes? Like, one big problem they had to fix last time was they were using an antiquated computer system that didn't dovetail with the Secretary of State's computer system. So we couldn't get up-to-date records quickly enough about who had submitted absentee ballots. That's been fixed, as I understand it, with some effort from the Secretary of State's office. What specifically would you do to expand the vote?
Well, the first thing, as you just said, is we have to make sure that the computer system that we have in place now can handle the absentee ballot. That was not the case in the past elections. So if that is fixed, and I hear it's fixed also, that's fine. But I want to look into that to make sure that is correct. The second thing is additional drop boxes. We've got to make sure that people can get to the drop boxes, get their votes in.
Okay, and just so people know, city clerk is a really important office that is essential to democracy. So on one hand, it deals with all absentee ballots. It certifies elections. It certifies petitions. It also deals with all the paperwork you file when there are land transactions, which are in fact the secret map to how our city is changing and who owns what and who's in trouble for what, and all our land records. So that's an important job. And Anthony Ackley, I think you're telling us that you have a kind of background as a contractor, as a science guy, as a tech guy that can look at this stuff to expand democracy and accountability.
Thank you. You said it better than I could have.
Okay, so we're talking now at Dateline New Haven. Democracy's alive. Republicans are fielding a real team for offices here with real issues, and we're talking to them, a bunch of them today, what it's about. John Carlson, the mayoral candidate and town chair, has told us there will be more people even added in weeks to come. But in the meantime, we're going to go more in depth with each of them in the general election campaign. But we'd like you to meet the folks. And Gil Roundtree, welcome to the show. You're running in Ward 11. Some people call it Bishop Meadows. Some people call it Quinnipiac Meadows, Bishop Woods, Fairhaven Heights. What do you call it?
I call it Quinnipiac Meadows.
Okay, and I believe that's people want to switch from Bishop Woods to Quinnipiac Meadows. There is a Democratic primary brewing there against the Yul Whatley, a public housing advocate, is taking on retired police captain Gerald Lantoons, the incumbent Democrat. Gail, can you just tell us why you're running and what your background is and what your big issue is?
Okay, so I'm a corporate professional with 25 years of experience.
What does that mean, corporate professional? What did you do where?
I'm working corporate IT.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I decided to jump in this race so, to be a part of the solution and not part of the complaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Time to get involved. Either put up or shut up in my view. So what I'm trying to do, bring some experience and, really try to bring people together here, because I do think there are, people agree on a lot more than they disagree on.
I'd second that.
Yeah,
We even saw some of that this week, during the whole Black Lives Matter, police defund argument, where everybody fighting in the streets did have different philosophies, left, right. But I was hearing stuff on both sides that I thought there was a deal here. Because before this all started, it was conservative cops who would tell me, well, I don't like community policing. Police aren't social workers. We can't solve every problem. Let us do our job and bring in other people to do those jobs. Then when the protests started, the people who were opposed to the police were saying, you're not social workers. You can't do the job he's done. Let's defund the police. And then the police were in defensive posture. And now a year later, when it's calmed down and we're working at nuts and bolts solutions, all of a sudden you're seeing all those different people talking about what they agree on, which is that, we need cops to stop crime. And we need people who aren't cops to deal with non-cop stuff, so cops aren't trying to solve every problem in society. Exactly. So give me an example on an issue you're running on that's like that, where you see a common problem you're trying to fix that can bring people together.
For me, it's financial responsibility. I think people understand that, this deficit that New Haven has, we have to pay for it, folks. Money doesn't grow on trees. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be coming down to some hard decisions here. Taking a look at programs, maybe doing cost-benefit analysis of what really works and what does not, and making those decisions. And if it's not working, then we got to use it to pay for something else.
Okay, so Gail, we would all agree with that, right? People on all sides. Right. As we follow the debate over the years, rarely does a candidate, and I understand why you're running for office, you don't want to get people angry, they don't usually give a specific example of something they would cut. And what makes it trickier now is it's like we're all going to be high on drugs for 2 years. There's going to be all this money coming in, so we don't feel the same pressure to deal with the endemic structural imbalances. I see Josh nodding his head because he was talking about those imbalances before we all got high on this needed relief money. But there are some systemic fixes underway that don't solve the problem. We're increasing our pension contributions, though not enough. We're getting a different pilot state reimbursement for tax and property, at least for 2 years. We don't know if it's permanent. We're getting more reimbursement. Yale's going to be ponying up around $5 million more a year. It's still not going to close the gap. Looking at that, Gail, what specific cuts or changes would you make?
Well, I'm still in the process of really looking into that issue a bit further here. The one thing I can tell you is that living in Quinnipiac Avenue in a condo complex that I do see that our roads are deteriorating. Where's that money going to?
Mm-hmm. That most of the money for that comes from the state, right?
Yeah, I do know, but looking into things like that, so I'm still really researching the issue.
But I'm glad you brought that up because you know it. You're an expert on what it's like to live in Quinnipiac Avenue, and I agree with you. From what our reporting is, that's one of the worst places in the world to be near a road. First of all, the trash is out of control. You have, Vin Maritoli goes up on his own and collects the trash,
Absolutely.
But also the speeding is crazy there. The condition of the road is crazy there. So I think you have a winning issue here. What would you specifically do about the roads?
I think that we need to, bring it to the right people, that it is a problem. I do see the residents, and I have been out talking to the other residents in the public housing. They are starting to pick up the trash now. I have a gentleman in a wheelchair who I gave garbage bags to. He's actually going down and pick it up. And he says, you know what? I know I don't have everything, but I don't need people living in a mess.
Uh-huh. So one thing is the mess. What about the speeding and the condition of the road? Any thoughts on that?
We are looking to see, my management company and I see who can pay for this. I know that our community does pay for the roads that we own. Mm-hmm. We have resolved those potholes. But right at the beginning of Quinnipiac Avenue, when you enter into the complexes, there are huge holes there. Mm-hmm. Huge. It requires them to be cut out and the road closed down. So we need to figure out how that's going to get done because there's only one way into the property and one way out.
So it's fair to say, Gary Roundtree, in addition to running to give people choices and be part of a solution, some of your big issues are finding the long-term efficiencies in government by doing cost-benefit analysis of programs to see how we can get our budget more under control without tax increases, and addressing the crater-like potholes in Quinnipiac Avenue where you live and finding ways to fill them. All right, you're listening to Candidates for Local Office. Yes, folks, there's democracy in New Haven this year in 2021 with a whole bunch of candidates running for citywide and local offices in New Haven from the Republican Party. Remember them? You might have heard of them. They used to run for office in New Haven. They're running again, and we're talking to them on Dateline New Haven. There's a debate, if you want to follow it, which I'd rather not bring into the show right now, between some commenters on whether the GOP uses dog whistles with violence and whether it's real or not. I think that we don't need to do this right now on the air, but feel free to continue that one on the comment thread. So Josh Van Hoosen, I'm going to try to permanently learn that. He's a regular on the show over the years because he runs for office quite a bit with a kind of winning attitude with his voters, whether or not they end up voting for him, which is that he really loves democracy. He doesn't trash his opponents, but he's pretty outspoken about needing to examine some of the core issues in the city more fundamentally. Josh, you're in Ward 26, which is Upper Westville. You're running against Darrell Brackeen, who's been an incumbent. I'm trying to guess, is he 8 years or 6 years?
8 years, I believe.
Okay, he's running for re-election. What are your main issues right now, and what are your proposed fixes?
Oh, man, not to sound like a broken record here, but fiscal responsibility for one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, honestly, my other big thing is project management when it comes to the Board of Alders. They're all great individuals. They've got the best interest of the city at heart. They just don't seem to have the project management skills to get everything to the finish line. And we've got some clear examples of that over the years. You know, our pension task force, you know, they just didn't meet for 2 years. And our pension didn't go away. The issues with the pension didn't go away. They just got worse.
Is that an Alder task force? Is that a task force that the Alders appoint people to?
I believe it's a task force the Alders appoint people to.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'd be another, like, are you thinking also in terms of following up when someone makes a promise as part of a deal for, let's say, a development project or a tax break? Or are you talking about when they create it, like they're about to create a new department on resiliency? Or are you talking about questions that get asked to police officers, police brass about overtime and whether there's a follow-up meeting 3 months later about how that got spent? Give me some other examples that popped into your mind as you watched that.
I mean, honestly, all of those are great examples in regards to it. Even, and this is a complaint that I've had from individuals in my neighborhood a lot. So they'll ask the Alder, they'll be like, well, here's an issue that I have. The Alder go, yep, I'll follow through in regards to that. And then they never hear back. Or if they hear back, it's just, or, you know, they reach out again, it's just another, yep, I'll look into that. So there's no central, like, task management. And so at my work, I'm a project manager. I have to deal with projects from companies that are...
And it's a software company, right? And Josh, can you turn your own volume up because we're not able to raise you here? You're faint on the air, and we can't fix that.
Yep.
Now you're watching project management in the process. Here's the computer IT guy who's going to make you able to hear him on his laptop. So, Josh, I want to go a little deeper on this because I'm really interested in this. People don't usually, that's why I love interviewing you. You bring up stuff like we don't usually think about, but that matter, which is project management and follow-through. So partly you're talking about follow-through when individuals contact their alders who are busy and try to stay atop a lot of stuff, and you're saying people can do better getting back, not just the first time, but to see if something's actually fixed. But, but I'm really interested, too. I believe you're onto something. I'm really interested, too, on some other follow-up as the alders as a body. Like what kind of specific issues, let's say, with when they do the budget every year and then promises are made at the end as part of that budget for how savings are going to be realized, their government's going to be rejiggered for long-term efficiencies. What have you seen other cases besides the pension task force where the follow-through hasn't been great, like policing, overtime?
Yeah, I was going to say our accountability task force is another great example.
What is that?
You know,
I forgot what that is.
So I'm chair of the community management team, and when we put together because we have the civilian review board. Sorry, it's the proper term for it. You know, it was ages before, one, it even got filled, two, they started to meet, and three, anyone kind of knew what was going on in regards to it. I had people in the community asking me. I would shoot answers to the alders. I wouldn't necessarily get concrete answers back. No one knew kind of how the process for getting people on the board went. It was, well, it's up to the CMT. And then the CMTs were like, well, you know,
are you talking about when the CMTs would submit names of proposed people for the board, and then the mayor would decide among those choices?
Yeah, correct. And there was no real clear process in regards to like qualifications, criteria, thought process.
So let's think what an alder does. And one frustration I have in covering the alders, I happen to agree with you that they're good people who have the best interests at heart. One frustration I have with many alders is that because they don't have the power to do everything, they always throw up their hands and get mad at a city staffer if they've given them information that doesn't bear up when we ask follow-up questions. I'm thinking about the decision every year to give $900,000 to a convicted sex predator who's using the money for salary for himself behind bars and avoid paying damages. It's supposed to be money used for building low-income housing or fixing. The answer we kept getting back is, well, the city told us that. We're mad at the city for telling them that, even though the alders had their own lawyer and could have taken other action. Are you suggesting that an alder has more of a responsibility to independently assess information coming from the city and others to answer constituents' government questions?
Well, I think we do because I'm not an alder yet, but I believe the alders do. We're not just here to rubber stamp, and honestly, I was a little frustrated. The whole tax break situation was incredibly frustrating. Partly because I felt like they did just pass it up to the state. Everyone just kind of threw their hands up in the air and went, well,
we're
it's
talking here about
decision.
Year in and year out. The city, which is supposed to, by state law, review and say whether it's a good idea to give nonprofits state tax breaks, credits, to supposedly fix up properties in poorer neighborhoods. Every year we're giving close to $1 million to Daniel Greer's companies, which he's running from prison, taking a salary from prison while he's paying a lot of lawyers to try to avoid paying out $1 million adjustments from kids he raped. Every year we're signing off on it. When it happened this year, the alders said, well, the city gave us that recommendation. The city hall says, well, we have no choice but to give the recommendation yes, no matter what paperwork we get. And the alders said, well, because things are so unclear, we just have to say yes, even though statute says in plain language you can review and make a list.
Yeah,
but they're worried about getting sued.
I disagree with the alders in regards to their interpretation in regards to that. And it's something we've seen before. Just because, and again, I like city staff. They're, from all the individuals I've dealt with, they're qualified folks. That doesn't mean they're always correct. And we've seen that even with, like the lead mitigation issue. We had city staff and lawyers say, well, this is our position is right. And then, the state and other lawyers came back and went,
Not just them, we lost 5 times in court and we maintained the position until we changed it. Part of the issue there is what you do with a lawyer. Like, I actually think we have excellent lawyers right now.
Yeah.
But what a lawyer does is the lawyer tells you every way you could possibly get sued. They tell you that every interpretation of law, every risk you make. That doesn't mean you never do anything in life. Like I ride my bike. I could get hit by a car, so I try to do certain things so I can get hit by a car. Doesn't mean I should never ride a bike just because I might get hit by a car. Similarly, a city, when you make a decision as a lawmaker and official, you need to know what the risks are and take them into effect. But the lawyer's doing their job telling you every risk. Doesn't mean that you therefore say, I'm going to give $1 million every year that's not going to be spent on low-income housing to help a sex predator not pay his victims and pay himself a salary behind bars. Can't you say, like when I asked this of the mayor, he said, what are you saying? I'm supposed to tell the lawyers to give me a legal opinion that fits my end, even if it's not right? And it seems to me there's a third way, which is find me a legal, legitimate, ethical way of accomplishing a goal that doesn't involve performing evil.
Yeah, and there's an old saying that's kind of said as a joke, which is, I don't have a lawyer to tell me what I can't do. I have a lawyer to tell me how I can do the things that I want to do.
And isn't there a middle ground? Like I have a lawyer to tell me what the risks are and also find ways to legally do the right thing rather than the harmful thing?
Yeah, exactly. And I felt a lot of the arguments around that issue were disingenuous. And there's a more fundamental question on at least, and I forget which of the nonprofits it was, but it was one that was more involved in sort of like the fiscal side of things. Should this organization exist? If it is part of their bylaws that they can support an individual who has done such evil things in this way, should that nonprofit exist?
All right. Well, that's Joshua Van Hoosen, who's running for Alder in Ward 26. He's run before, first in the East Shore, then in Upper Westville. And we're talking this hour with Republicans running for citywide and neighborhood office in New Haven this year. So far, we got John Carlson for mayor, James O'Connell for Board of Ed, Anthony Ackery for city clerk, and then in the neighborhoods, Joshua Van Hoosen, Ward 26, Upper Westville, Gail Rountree in Ward 11, which will forever be known as Quinnipiac Meadows, not Bishop Woods from here on in. Deb Reyes from Fairhaven Heights in Ward 13, who couldn't make it on the air today. And John Carlson did reveal another secret, which is that more names will be coming up. John Carlson, you're running for mayor. And as I understand it, you're raising money to run under the Democracy Fund, which means you're looking for public financing. Like Justin Elliker, like Karen Boys Wanton when she was running for mayor, like John DeStefano in years where he felt he could afford to because he didn't have a serious threat until he threw it out the window so he could hit up contractors for all the money he could. You're looking to agree to run under a system where you're going to limit contributions to, I believe, $390 an individual rather than $1,000. And you're going to limit, you're not going to take any money from political action committees or special interest committees. And in return, you're looking to get welfare. That's a little poke at you. You're looking to get a little government money to help you run your campaign. Why are you doing that? You some kind of liberal?
Well, it's a program that exists, and it exists to aid democracy in New Haven. It gives the little guy, gives a small party a chance to have their voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going for the 200 signatures from New Haveners at $10 each and above.
Not signatures, donations.
Well, donations with signatures. They have to sign a form. That will get me a grant of $20,000. Addition, it has matching funds, doubled at the first $30. So in a perfect world, I get 200 New Haveners to give me $30 each. That gets doubly matched, so it turns into a $90 donation. So I end up with basically $30-something thousand to run my campaign. My opponent already spent, I believe, over $70,000 on his campaign, coming up to what was perceived to be a primary, which hasn't materialized. I, unlike him, am not going to raise more than $75,000.
Wait, you just went from 70 to 75.
To show the city that I am indeed fiscally responsible, I am going to limit my contributions to under $75,000. If I reach $75,000, I will turn people away and tell them to donate the money to a food bank, to a charity, to a homeless shelter, to an environmental cause. I will run this campaign and raise and spend under $75,000, which my opponent has already spent on the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So
just to be clear,
if you'd like to give, make a donation, click on carlsonformayor.com.
Number 4.
On contribution. And
Number
make
4.
A $10 donation.
Number 4.
That's
so
right.
Everybody.
Carlson for mayor.
And let's help them spell Carlson. So if you want to have another candidate be able to run a competitive campaign, have the money to do it, it's Carlson, CARLSON 4 mayor.com. You find out about John Carlson's campaign for mayor, and you also find out how you can give him Democracy Fund money, whether or not you're going to vote for him in November to get him the support to compete. Just to be clear, do you philosophically support the Democracy Fund, or are you just using it because that's reality and that's where we are, that's the system there, so you need to compete?
No, I believe in it, but I believe it should limit the amount spent. Right now, I believe you can raise a little over $100,000 from the Democracy Fund,
mm-hmm.
but you're capped at spending at $390,000. I think $390,000 on the mayoral campaign in New Haven is an absurd amount of money,
mm-hmm.
and I think people would be, the world would be a better place if people took that money and donated it to their local food bank, the Boys Club, the Boy Scouts, the environment, anything but wasting money on a campaign. I mean, a lot of it's wasted. You go door to door, you see people, they don't even pick up the door hangers from their door. They're on the streets, they're littered. So
I guess part of the philosophy here you're talking
I think it's
about
way too high, but I think it opens the door to democracy. So I think in upcoming years, we may see not 2, we may see 3, 4, 5 different people running for mayor under the Democracy Fund, which is only going to bring discourse and problem solving to the table. Right now, with one-party rule, you have everyone living in an echo chamber.
mm-hmm.
Somebody says something, everybody else agrees with it. The alders go along basically pretty much 90% of the time, they go with whatever the mayor says. They vote yes.
Okay, real quickly, I want to do a round robin
Well,
here.
Switch hats for a minute.
Excuse me, James?
If I can switch my hat for a minute here.
Switch your hat, man. You ran for state rep.
Okay.
Did you use democracy? Did you use the state public financing for that?
No, I did not.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been a member of the board of the Democracy Fund
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
since I believe 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, as a result of that, I am unable to contribute to John's campaign. I'll be very honest with that. Okay. But I would encourage everyone to help him participate in this and to be actually the first Republican to ever get some money out of this campaign, out of this fund. So far, since it's been in existence, I believe since 2007, no Republican has ever collected a penny.
Well, that's also because it only covers the mayor's race, and Rick Elser was the last candidate, and that was in 2007.
Correct.
So,
But,
Jim,
you know,
now, so you're on the board, so it sounds like you support the concept. When you ran for state rep, you didn't use public financing, even though the party was. The Republicans running, we're collecting, we're trying to pay in the system. Do you have a philosophical split on this? I really enjoyed John's nuanced position on it. Do you support public financing or not?
Yes, I do. very much so. Again, in a city like New Haven, there's no way that, the Republicans realistically are ever really going to get a message out. And that's a great hope and help to other candidates as well. And even in, in the majority party for the non-incumbents, it's a tremendous way to get their message out. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage everyone, as you just mentioned, whether or not you intend to vote for John or not, at least pony up, a signature and, $10, I think is the minimum.
Is it 10 or 30, John? I think it's 10. Yeah, okay. So let's
10,
just remind people
30,
what that is.
First 30's matched.
That's Carlson, Carlson 4, number 4. Carlson for mayor. You're going to have to look up, I spell that one yourself, .com, and you're going to get that together. Quick round robin, folks, because we're running out of time. Put you on the hot spot here. Airport, plan to expand it, coming for the Board of Alders, up or down. One-word answer from each. Would you vote yes to approve this proposed deal to expand the airport and service in Tweed, or no? Let's start with John. What's your position?
No.
Okay, I'll let you say why.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's a good idea to sign a 43-year lease at any point. So the lease is much too long. That's one reason. And I'll be on the record as I would not be in support of the city using eminent domain to seize any properties.
Okay.
So, other than that, I don't think I could stop the airport from expanding, but I wouldn't sign a 43-year lease, and I wouldn't use eminent domain to
How do you feel about signing a deal with Goldman Sachs to look out for a public entity and manage it? It's a leading question. Okay, we'll leave that for another day.
Thank you.
Josh Van Hoosen, you lived in the Cove back in the day. I would imagine you like to fly. You're kind of like a techie guy. What do you think of the airport? Would you go for this deal or no?
No.
And why is that?
So I gotta parrot some of the same reasons. So eminent domain, I'm a little iffy on some of the finances of the deal, and honestly, some of the environmental impact of expanding or doing more with that airport, I don't think have been fully fleshed out.
Do you think there's going to be is there going to be an airport there in 30 years with climate change?
What's that?
Is there going to be an airport there in climate change in 30 years? Okay.
Good question, Jim. No.
All right, Gail Roundtree, it affects you. Those planes go over your house. Are you for expanding the airport or no?
I am not.
And what's your reason?
Same reasons everyone else is echoing: eminent domain, environmental concerns, and I don't want those noisy airplanes over my house.
Okay, one last one. I promised. Oh, Ellen Gabrielle is a longtime lefty political activist and organizer. She writes in the comments, I'm finding myself a lot of inner conflict. The New Haven Republicans sound more like what the Dems are supposed to be. Pro-environment, pro-people. I see the concept of project manager accountability being a fantastic way to create great transparency and help people know what resources and information need to move a task forward. Thanks for that comment. And I think that comment is really what today's show has been about and what the season of A Hint of Democracy is in New Haven. We have all our fights nationally. They matter. We have all these philosophical fights. They matter. But the thing that matters more than anything else is what we can affect in our backyard and how we take our values and try to have a better city, a community for everyone. I think Gail Roundtree said it best on this issue, on this program. We often agree more than we disagree, especially when it comes to solving problems. And I've really enjoyed today talking about how we might solve some problems in New Haven and how the Republican Party is going to bring a lot of alternatives to the table this year, which I'm very excited about. And now I'm going to go against everything I said and ask a cheap shot national question. Ready, guys? Round robin. I'm giving you a heads up that this is a cheap shot lefty question. I just had to ask one because I've been so kind in giving you guys the floor. One by one, starting with John. Who won the 2020 presidential election? John.
Joe Biden.
Okay. Anthony.
Biden.
Okay. Boy, it's looking like a landslide maybe. Well, let's see. Jim O'Connell, you're citywide. Who won the 2020 presidential election?
Joe Biden.
All right. Biden's doing pretty well here today, even better than he does among Democrats. Gail, who won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden.
Okay, but now I don't know what's going to happen here. Josh Van Hoosen, who won in 2020?
I mean, given I voted for him, I wasn't happy about voting for him, but I voted for him, Joe Biden.
What was that woman who ran in 2016 for the Greens? You remember her name?
Jill Stein?
Jill Stein. I think Jill Stein won the election, but we're going to leave national because Russia was helping her. But anyway, we're going to leave national politics aside. That's not really what today was about. I want to thank you guys for joining us today at Dateline New Haven. You are all personally invited back for your own shows with your opponents if they wish to come. Josh, I'm a little skeptical yours are going to show up, but we're going to try to get everybody on the air together, and if your opponents don't come, you'll have your own hour of your own as the general election gets closer. In the meantime, please let us know at the New Haven Independent everything you're doing with your campaigns. We love democracy in New Haven. We don't endorse candidates. We can be obnoxious in hair shirts and get involved in individual issues, but we can't promote candidates for office. We promote democracy, which is what you guys are doing. My hats are off to you. We need multiple parties in New Haven. We need multiple voices. We need people who said, like Gail Drowntree did and Anthony said, instead of complaining, which is fine, get up and try to be involved and solve the problem. So hats off today to John Carlson, mayoral candidate for the Republican Party this year, Josh Van Hoosen, Ward 26 candidate, Gail Roundtree, Ward 11 campaign, James O'Connell, Board of Ed campaign candidate, Anthony Ackley, City Clerk campaign, Deborah Escanones couldn't make it. Ellen Gabriela says, thank you so much for letting us know what you're thinking. That's one of my fellow left-wing people weighing in. And there's going to be more candidates coming up, John Carlson said. If you want to keep democracy alive, you can consider going to Carlson for Mayor, CARLSON, 4 mayor.com to find out more about contributing Democracy Fund and what the positions are. And I want to thank Harry Droz, who's a sympathetic bedfellow, you guys. He's our station manager at WNHHF. He's the miracle man at WNHH, miracle man who keeps us going on all platforms and keeping the station running. Thanks for producing us, Harry. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.